Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. I just realized that we always record in the afternoon. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's actually true. If we've ever done an early recording, and I just say that every single time. Anyway, welcome to the podcast where we got nothing to hide. You get a peek behind the curtain into our lives and how fasting has transformed them so dramatically over the last 4+ going on 5 years now, Tommy.
Yeah.
Just incredible. So welcome in. If you are new, thanks for giving us a shot. Thanks for adding us to your fasting, weight loss, health journey. Hopefully we provide you with massive value today.
That's the goal.
And if you want to know more about us and how it transformed our lives and why we do what we do week in and week out every single Tuesday, bringing you a podcast episode with actionable steps to adopt into your lifestyle today, right now, once you stop listening. Head back to episode 1, give us a listen. That's our story, and you'll learn more about who we are and what we do and why we do it. Mm-hmm. Long-term listeners, shout out to y'all for continuing to drive the numbers, the downloads, and ultimately the impact.
Yeah.
Because without y'all being on this journey with us, we wouldn't exist. So
wouldn't be the same.
Podcast world would just be like poof, just like the majority of podcasts. Poof, they just vanish.
Right.
But we are so grateful that you continue to listen, and we are so thankful for our ratings and reviews. So download, follow, share, rate, review, subscribe, unsubscribe, whatever it is that you do. I want to give a shout out to Cuddle Blanket, who gave us a review. Love the name. And it kind of goes with the title, I Get Comfort from This Podcast.
Glad to hear
Powerful.
that. Yeah.
Powerful.
And he or she said, trying to heal. I really like that, especially coming off of last week's episode where we talked about healing various disease processes, how intermittent fasting, prevention, longevity, health optimization, all that kind of stuff. So Cuddle Blanket, go back and listen to last week's episode if you haven't yet, because really healing is the name of the game. Yes, there is a lot of talk about weight loss and things like that, because that's an issue that so many of us are dealing with or have dealt with. But ultimately, it's about healing and quality of life and health optimization for sure.
Yep. And next week, we have a podcast. Mm-hmm. So keep listening, Cuddle Blanket. Reach out if you need us. Join the challenge. Grab our resources. That's why we do what we do. So thank you for being so kind, for the 5-star review, and for listening to us drone on sometimes. I'm the funny one. Tommy's the good-looking one.
Yeah.
As we like to say. But in all honesty, we're going to be doing another Q&A because those are some of our most listened to and most download episodes. And we got away from them for a while for some reason. But now we're going to be consistently bringing them every 4 to 6 episodes. I keep saying that. So we're consistent in bringing those to you. We may increase or decrease. Let us know your thoughts on it. But the conversation for today matches perfect with the trying to heal comment that we just highlighted. Mm-hmm. Is that this question or statement, I guess question and statement, came in from Ivan. So shout out to you, Ivan. We're not going to do a Q&A where we kind of like rat-a-tat-tat, go through a bunch of different questions that we think apply to the vast majority of, the fasting for lifers, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But this was a great kind of, let's pump the brakes. Let's go 30,000 foot view. And let's talk about benefits of fasting for folks that don't want or have to lose weight. So thank you, Ivan. This is the message. Hello. I was wondering whether you made a podcast about fasting benefits for people who do not want to lose weight.
Nice.
And have no problems with diabetes. Yeah, that's great. I know we talk a lot about diabetes. It's more from hey, if it works for diabetics to reverse it, it should also work for us to prevent it.
Yeah.
So says, I checked your podcast on Spotify, all 250 plus, but I did not find it. Anyway, thanks for this podcast. Regards.
Nice.
So Ivan.
Thanks for the message.
Yeah. Sometimes we get caught up in our fasting frenzy because we talk about fasting 24/7, 365. This is what we do.
True story.
Yeah, right. And so interesting that I'm married to a calorie counter tracking queen.
That is pretty good. That's pretty
macro
funny.
master.
Yeah.
Who,
well,
by the way,
they say opposites attract, right?
Right? Oh gosh, if we are yin and yang, my goodness. Shout out, just qualified as a amateur, beginner, intermediate. I don't know I used to be big into CrossFit back in the day, but my testosterone and lack of mobility and powerlifting stupidity kept injuring myself. So I stopped, and now I do a lot more calisthenic bodyweight walking and kettlebell stuff that's easier on the old joints that I abused for so many years.
Right.
But shout out my macro tracking, calorie counting queen, who's in phenomenal shape and health after 3 babies. She works hard at it, but they just qualified for the fittest games in Austin.
No way.
Coming up in January. I'm like, all right, I guess we're going to Austin. Cool. We're going to get grandma and grandpa here so we can go. Anyway.
Very cool.
The reason I say that is the one person I really don't talk about fasting 24/7 with is my wife.
Yeah.
Because she does the opposite and it works for her. And we used to do it together and it didn't work for me. And I got sicker and worse and my labs got worse and my insulin resistance got worse. And yeah, so it's just crazy that she does fast. She does do some fasting. But for her, it's more for a mental, spiritual type thing, which kind of goes along the lines with this podcast about fasting benefits that don't have to do with weight loss, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into it and go big picture, 30,000 foot, I will say this, Ivan, is that I would rather it say, and we've done a couple episodes recently on this, the BMI versus BRI, right? Why the BMI should go bye-bye, I think is how we titled it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But this, it shouldn't be for weight loss. It should be for waist loss, right? Because we want, we know the waist circumference and the insulin resistance and visceral adiposity is so vitally important correlation and causation between insulin resistance, metabolic disease, and ultimately lifestyle conditions rearing their head in the later stages of or later decades of life. So,
great point,
Tommy.
Yeah.
With that being said, we got a little diagram that we're going to talk about, right? An outline.
Yeah.
Is what are the other long-term benefits of fasting?
So you just outlined a couple of things there. And one question that I have is, could you need fat loss or fat reduction, but maybe not even realize it based on what the scale says?
Body composition.
Right. And so this is a question for Ivan and for you and for everybody, for me, right, and especially for my former self as well. But I mean, I was not generally speaking ever in that category of, don't love the label of it, we've talked about it before, but skinny fat. But right. I've known, I've worked with, there were people in various clinics and various settings that I had worked with that were in that category. And so they would have said the same thing, which was, I don't need to lose any weight on the scale, but at the same time, they were in need of body composition changes, and they were also in need of health optimization improvements. And some of them were aware of this and some of them weren't, because BMI wise, they were looking like they were in a good category. Now, at the time, right, if I had access, if I knew the BRI, the body roundness indicator, that would show a little bit different story, just like you said, like waist reduction rather than weight reduction. So I love that clarification there too.
And that's that whole, I always mess up the acronym, but I'm trying to think of it real quick. It's if I think about this, it's the skinny fat. No, it's TOFI. Thin outside, fat inside.
Okay. Yes.
TOFI. And this is in the research too. And I want to say one thing here too, is because Ivan, this is such a great point and hopefully this conversation lands with you. And if you're like, yeah, totally missed the mark, then reply and see if we can do a better job next time.
Sure.
But when I think about this, it's, you know, for me, it was pretty clear when I was in the powerlifting, I looked like a strongman in the off season. I had the big belly, right?
Yeah.
But I needed the weight to move the weight. If you look at all the massive Olympic, you know, weightlifters from China and Russia and all the stands, the Kazakh stands and Uzbekistan stands and all the I don't understands for me personally.
Yeah.
See, I'm the funny one. Times a good looking one. They all have this extra weight. So for me, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I could this strong man in the off season could lose some weight. He's get the belly. But the opposite happens too, is this TOFI. And this is what Dr. Sean O'Mara talks a lot about, the full body MRI, the DEXA scans. So fasting has a lot of powerful benefits for growth hormone production, which is lean muscle tissue protective, right? So we can talk about the application of fasting in athletes. We can talk about the application of fasting in weight maintenance, right? Which is positive. But as we age, especially for women and now men, that our testosterone levels are tanking, especially here in the United States, is that we're going to be losing our muscle mass, but it doesn't mean we're going to lose our body size.
Right.
So this sarcopenia thing that takes place as you age, it's like, oh, my metabolism slowed down. Well, not really. Mid 60s to late 60s is what the research shows. But transition from testosterone coming down, and then in women, peri to menopause transition, you're going to have this where protein, you need more protein to stimulate the same mTOR pathways that help build lean muscle as you age.
Yeah.
We're more sedentary than ever, right? So like, if we're looking at just from a body composition standpoint, in terms of as we age, or the skinny fat TOFI scenario, you may not know that you have, you know, lots of visceral adiposity inside, right?
Sure.
That is causing or driving metabolic dysfunction, right?
Yeah.
Down the
Even
road.
at a healthy weight.
Right.
Yeah. Even at a healthy weight. So that means the scale might give you zero indication of that. And the other important factor is the correlation between testosterone levels in men and women with overall muscle mass is huge. It's one of the best, if not the best, indicator or predictor of muscle mass. And so the trouble there is that excess body fat, whether it's visceral fat, the absolute worst kind around our visceral organs, or subcutaneous fat, the less dangerous fat but more obvious type of fat, is that the higher our fat levels go, the more pressure that puts on our entire endocrine system, and at the heart of part of the core of that would be our testosterone levels. So then the trouble there is that excess fat puts pressure on testosterone levels, drives them down. That's highly correlated, and then that's a problem for muscle mass as well. So again, even if we're at a healthy weight, if we have excess fat, we can go towards improving testosterone levels and thus muscle mass and overall metabolic rate by getting a grip and making improvements on our body composition.
Yeah, and I didn't know we were going to start here today, so don't worry, Ivan. We're going to go big picture here in just a minute. But it's interesting that this just kind of came up in real time as we prep. We're like, yeah, okay, this is a consideration. But when we look at, if we just look at like Dr. Mark Hyman's research on this skinny fat syndrome, is about 25% of the population is in a healthy weight range, yet they're pre-diabetic. And about 80 million Americans, 70, 80 million Americans fall into that category as well, right? And you may know someone. So it's health isn't just defined by that one small metric. What do you weigh in the scale and how tall are you, right? That's why I said, waist versus weight earlier. So we've got this diabetes problem, right? But if we're looking at just some things to know if this is a potential for you, not you, Ivan, but anyone out there, is, fasting blood sugar that's greater than 90, triglycerides that are, elevated, HDL that's decreased, and blood pressure that's elevated, right? So how would you know? Well, you would have to probably get an fasting insulin test and some not standard lipid profile, metabolic profile type tests, because a lot of the standard stuff is not as, let's say, it shouldn't be on the pedestal that it's been on for so many years. In for example, like LDL. But I'm going to land the plane here. Simple things you can do to help with this potential category is, cutting out refined sugars, cutting out, drinking your calories, eating more fat, increasing your fiber, exercising, avoid, tremendous amounts of the artificial stuff, refined processed sweeteners, etc. Focus on sleep, right? So a lot of the stuff that anyone can do to be healthy. But those are the things that will really move the needle to make sure that we're focusing on blood sugar management, which, by the way, fasting is wonderful at. Fat burning, which, again, fasting is wonderful at increasing your ketones and burning through that short-term energy, as well as, ultimately moving you towards using fasting as a tool for health rather than weight loss, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so, I mean, a few of those things that you just mentioned, as far as those are levers to help with your fasting, and they are also benefits from consistent fasting as well. So it's almost a cool solution-based chicken and egg situation here, where you have like more consistent fasting can help. One of the non-weight related benefits would be improved sleep and recovery, which is going to be great for your body overall, as far as your inflammation levels, your immune function. And then you have the fact that consistent fasting leads to improvement in sleep. And that also, if you just focus on your sleep to improve your sleep, guess what? Fasting gets easier at that point too, because the less rested I am means, more cravings, higher level of insulin resistance, lower insulin sensitivity. So it's harder to make good food choices, in the moment. Inhibitions get decreased at that point, and it's just tough. More late nights equals more late night snacking. Kind of hard to get off of that crazy train. So the cool thing when we talk about non-weight benefits of fasting is that the improvements that come often lead to further improvements along those lines, like a positive feedback loop, which is really, really cool.
And before we dive into like the exact, like what are the mechanisms that we see improvements in and whatnot, I want to say this too. For fasting for non-weight loss, there's a really cool spiritual journey component to this as well.
Yeah.
When you're doing fast or long fast or David fast or Daniel fast, excuse me. Most religions in the world have some fasting component. Look at Ramadan, right? Lots of studies on that as well. But when we look at like short-term kind of fat loss strategies, we're going to be rotating through varied fasting windows and stacking your cycling. Fasts and what was that?
Fast cycling.
Thank you. And kind of, getting the scale moving, so to speak. Right. But when we talk about this other category, but long-term benefits of fasting, like doing a 7+ day fast once a year, Walter Longo recommends, because it does it like a whole system reset. It senescent cells go away, stem cells increase, autophagy increases. It's kind of like this master reset, right? So there's long-term other health-related, non-weight related benefits of doing extended fasting spiritually and or physiologically that kind of can weave its way into this conversation as well. So before we go into the metabolic changes that we see, and the benefits of long-term fasting or periodic extended fast, 5-day, 7-day, 21-day, etc. Just a couple of extra considerations on some of the other benefits that aren't weight loss related.
Well, so talking about, let's say blood pressure, first of all, whenever we're looking at something like blood pressure, sometimes it can be an early indication of something else going on, some sort of dysfunction going on. There's a reason why it's highly correlated with cardiometabolic dysfunction. But it's oftentimes one of the earliest signs that someone might see. You step into a doctor's office and get it checked once in a while. Hey,
kind of ticked up a little bit.
Yeah, it ticked up a little bit. Hey,
white coat syndrome.
Maybe a little white coat syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I'm measuring at home and I'm still seeing a little quote unquote white coat syndrome, then it might be starting to tick up. Well, guess what? Higher insulin levels mean higher blood pressure. They go hand in hand as well. Right. And so just that right there can be one of those big things that a lot of folks are trying to get a handle on, even if there's nothing wrong with what they're seeing on the scale. I think that's an absolute big one, because one of the tricky things there is that if I don't get those small tick ups under control in my blood pressure, they usually continue to increase. And then that can put me on the path towards longer term medication management. And once I kind of get on that train, it can be really tough to get off. It's much easier and more likely going through our healthcare system that something's going to get added on to that blood pressure medication later on, or the dosage is going to increase over time.
So two of the big categories I'd say under metabolic benefits that I'd like to mention is one, you just mentioned, Tommy, like reduction in, blood pressure, or reduction in triglycerides, right? Triglycerides, or an improvement in your HDL triglyceride ratio, which I care way more about than an LDL number.
Or liver enzymes too.
Liver enzymes, preventing this fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, that we've done episodes on.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of good preventive type or lab related type stuff where you can, now your body's smarter than us. So sometimes you start fasting and get your lab work done. You're like, oh, what the heck? Those numbers, give it time. Okay.
Yeah.
Stay consistent. But there's a lot of positives there that you can have a direct correlation. Like for me, my fasting insulin, when I found out I was undiagnosed pre-diabetic, couldn't figure out what was going on, counting my calories, tracking my macros, eat less, move more, wasn't working. My wife was getting all these great results. She's like, are you cheating? I'm like, no, I'm not eating Burger King on the way home. I'd like to.
Right. Yeah.
Not Burger King, but like, I'm not eating pizza on the way home.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I cheated, it was a rotisserie chicken, like a keto ice cream, like that was 400 calories, right? It wasn't like we're going to the reservation, but my fasting insulin. So there's the non-weight loss related benefits from a physiological standpoint that all fall under those different metabolic markers, right? The second main one I want to mention there is ketosis. Is the fact that when you fast, you allow your body to get into a ketone productive or BHB productive state, meaning beta hydroxybutyrate, which technically isn't a ketone, it's a byproduct of. But anyway, the P strips and the breath meters, that's separate. We're talking about blood chemistry where you have BHB, ketones elevated. What that's going to do is not only there's a small window from like 0.5 to 1.5 for most folks, where that's going to be ideal for nutritional ketosis and weight loss.
Okay. Fat burning.
But when you start going from 1.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 5, now you're getting into the cool, like therapeutic application, restorative nature, stem cell production, BDNF improvements. Like you're getting into the cool stuff where your body's doing like some really cool healing stuff beneath the surface. And ebbing and flowing and flipping that metabolic switch is incredibly powerful in disease prevention, not just the markers, but long-term disease prevention that we'll talk about here in a minute. And never mind like decreased brain fog and better energy and better sleep and better libido, et cetera, et cetera. So this whole idea that the metabolic categories, we can talk about all those labs and numbers, but really just getting in and out of ketosis is really powerful.
Yeah, so that would be a pretty good definition of metabolic flexibility right there. So to Ivan's point about what are the benefits, or are there benefits outside of weight related, right? So the less pounds of visceral fat and subcutaneous fat that I have to burn off, generally speaking, the easier it will become to get in and out of ketosis. So what I mean there is that not that if I don't have weight to lose, it's necessarily going to be that I'm automatically in a metabolically flexible state. I'm probably not, without deliberate, work here on the physiology, because the recent studies showed I believe it was a decrease coming down from 12% metabolic flexibility in the population overall to now I want to say one of the later reports that you cited was like 7 or 8%. So it's one of those things where we have a big opportunity, room for improvement there as a population and individuals. So when we start talking about metabolic flexibility, if you have a lot of weight to lose and you're measuring your blood ketones, you might not see a whole lot of, higher ketone levels. But as the weight comes off, you might see that metabolic flexibility is improving. You might be able to get into deeper levels of ketosis faster. I definitely saw that where I never saw anything above about a 2.5 or so until I had probably gotten maybe 75, 80% of the excess fat stores off of my frame. But ketosis is such a cool metabolic switch. And what we see is that the brain and other tissues all around the body actually prefer ketones and are able to burn through them very, very quickly. So being able to go back and forth between more sugar burning or the glycolytic pathways, carbohydrate burning, and then into the more ketogenic states is a really, really important physiological switch to be able to pull.
Yeah, and we've done episodes on, not a big proponent. Thank you to the shout out a couple episodes ago. I think it was Mongoose who said we're not fanatics or what was the word?
Absolutists.
Absolutists, right? Like you gotta figure out what's going to work for you. We're all at a different place in our health journey, right?
Of course.
We've got some big rocks that we believe will move the needle for most people, fasting being one of them. But the ketogenic diet, right? Getting into ketosis, 90-day applications, it paramount in reversing diabetes, right? So what's to say a smaller dose of that, a week out of the month you focus on getting in ketosis, isn't going to have improvements? Well, they will, right? Because we know ketogenic diets increase levels of the good cholesterol. They decrease triglycerides. We mentioned that already. They balance your blood sugar and your insulin. We mentioned that already. They have good food relationship building, hormone balancing, appetite balancing type hormone, leptin and ghrelin, your hunger hormones, helping them balance out. You can have weight loss, or you can have deeper levels of therapeutic ketosis. You can have neurological benefits on the brain. We talk about BDNF, prevention of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. You can, it can help your mood. Like I'm a lot less hangry when I'm staying true to my fast and my more carnivore lifestyle that works for me. Have more energy. So ketone production is just great from top to bottom.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And I think that's where the misconception that bringing in more ketones, like from exogenous sources, like, the drops and, different oils and supplements. Yeah. It's like, I don't need to bring them in to get to levels that are helpful. What I need to do is get to the metabolic flexibility where I can burn through the stored sugar, the sugar in my bloodstream, go through my glycogen levels that are in my skeletal muscle, in my liver, and then start accumulating ketones in a natural way without bringing them in an exogenous way. Because if I bring them in, yes, I might be able to artificially, temporarily tick up my numbers, but that's not the beneficial point. The beneficial point is being able to switch that metabolic lever, and that's why we want to focus on the consistency of the fasting as well as the food choices that push us into that state.
I am, when it comes to the benefits of fasting, I mean, we can go 1,000 different directions that are non-weight loss related. So man, I'm just so thankful for this question. Let's talk about a big category, Tommy. And we've talked about this on different episodes individually about, with different research articles and looking at different markers and whatnot, TRF and TRE and ADF, et cetera. But fasting has a really powerful anti-inflammatory effect.
For sure.
Just this overall reduction in pain, symptom. We just had a testimonial come in from one of our coaching clients.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
Got back on track, did my first 72-hour fast in a while. Guess what? Back pain gone.
Gone. And it was, I believe he said it was an 8 out of 10 for the last, probably like 6 weeks or something.
The puffiness, the bloating, the digestive volatility, never mind.
Knee pain too.
Knee pain, right? So we're going to calm down the inflammatory cascade, the inflammatory cytokine cascade, these little chemicals in your body that float around and do stuff and irritate, muscle tissue and create the underlying issue for heart disease, which is not cholesterol, but oxidation of cholesterol or chronic inflammation, right? So we have this amazing thing that when you fast, your inflammation markers will come down. And one of the direct correlations is we have this thing called HSCRP, and it's just a low-level chronic inflammatory marker, or secretory IgA in the gut, SIG-A as it's known. You're going to see those numbers balance, because we don't necessarily want to go high or low. We want to get to the median, right? Get to the middle where our body is in balance, because that's where it optimizes the best.
Yeah.
When it comes to inflammation, you'll see those CRP numbers come down, but they're also directly connected to leptin and leptin resistance, which is your hunger hormones, your satiety hormone, excuse me. Mm-hmm. So just incredible anecdotally and in the research that we've gone over in the episodes past is that you will see a direct correlation of decrease in inflammation and pain. We've had people, heck, their tremors have improved, right? Yeah. Like just an incredible neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory response when you fast.
Yeah. And I mean, the cascades continue from there because those inflammatory cascades have an effect on every or almost every biochemical pathway in the body. So if inflammation is high, it's leading to problems all across the body, like you alluded to. And so when we talk about reduction in inflammation, just understanding that that's at the forefront, that's way upstream for so many disease processes that actually occur, that if we can help to balance that, we're putting ourselves in a powerful position to prevent a host of diseases or slow down the progression. Even if they're quote unquote diseases of old age, it doesn't mean that I need to start developing them or have them at a worse state earlier in life, right? I can extend that. That's extending quality of life. That's extending health span over time, which is incredible. And like these gaining control over some of these things almost leads to one of the other categories, which is mood enhancement. And you alluded to it earlier, but when you take one or two things, like let's say you have no weight to lose, and then but you're looking at your blood work and there's a couple of things that are just, they're ticking up or they're a little off, or you're starting to get those questions or those eyebrows raised by your provider, where it's like something might be looming here. We're going to have to keep an eye on this, or that might need, some assistance or medication in the future, whatever the case may be. That can be like a low level kind of chronic mood depressant right there. And so as we kind of gain control over some of these things, or we're able to restore some balance in our blood work, that leads to overall enhancements in mood that's almost like rarely kind of talked about. But right. That's a subconscious mood enhancer, let alone the ketosis benefits for the decreased brain fog and that more euphoric feeling, and just faster firing neurons because they're bathing in more BDNF because I'm making better food choices and I'm consistently supporting that with my better fasting. It's like now you really have this positive feedback cycle that you can essentially really like work on, which is why if you see somebody after they start fasting and they might drop some weight, so that's like the first noticeable thing. But if you go, man, you just feel like you're kind of different, from last time I saw you, or from last year or whatever. Sometimes these things are compounding over time, and some of these changes can happen relatively quickly over a matter of months. This isn't necessarily a matter of years or decades like it took to develop some of these issues, right?
One of the cool things about that mood change too that you just mentioned is decreased inflammation, secretory IgA, gut-brain axis. So many times we'll hear, and you can look at the research too. Dr. Ben Bickman has some on this where he'll do a little research highlights where the use of ketogenic diet for severe anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never suffered with it. We've had family members that have, but the power of fasting, in this category can go really, really far. Never mind from a mental standpoint. We mentioned the spiritual standpoint, but from just overall feeling better. When you feel better, you want to do more. You want to have more energy. You want to have more vitality. You want to impact the world. Like it's just this. You
dream bigger. You have bigger aspirations. You're like, see myself doing these things differently.
100%. So I want to talk just real quick in this last category as we wrap up, Tommy, of benefits of fasting that are not weight loss related. So we talked about anti-inflammatory, reduction in inflammation, blood pressure, lab metrics, ketosis, spiritual journey, mindfulness, mood enhancement, increased energy, metabolic benefits, right?
Yeah, stress, resiliency, sleep improvement.
Yep. So let's talk about this last one in the last minute or two, is conditions that are associated or related to insulin or blood sugar mismanagement. right? That insulin cascade. I mean, it's pretty much all of them, right? So you've got heart disease, you've got stroke, you've got PCOS, you've got certain cancers, you've got pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, headaches, cataract, pulmonary lung conditions, osteoarthritis, skin conditions, gout, et cetera, sleep apnea, asthma, all related to insulin resistance, right? So we did an article, an episode back in the day, all-cause mortality caused by, 8 out of the 10 reasons why people lose their life here in the States is some form of relationship to insulin resistance or metabolic dysfunction, right?
Right.
So when you ask Ivan about the benefits of fasting for non-weight loss, well, guess what? There's the list. The prevention of all of those things and all of those conditions that we just mentioned. That in itself takes the cake for me. Man, that cookie looks good. But I don't want ED. Or GI distress.
You're right.
Or CVD. Or continuing to be on the obese path. Or fatty liver. Or neuropathy. Or kidney issues later on down the road. I don't want any of that.
Yeah. I had to, I dealt with sleep apnea or borderline sleep apnea since I was a kid, like before I turned 10. And the changes that were required for that symptomatology to come down and for me to not need a CPAP machine and all of these things like that I watched my dad go through. And I was on that path. Like the fasting benefits for that alone, if that was the one thing that I could have done, or that I could have gotten a benefit from for consistent fasting, it would have been worth any sacrifice, any saying no, any pushing something off, Let's
go way less dire. Okay. I don't snore anymore. And guess who makes happy? Yeah. My wife. My life is considerably better.
Yeah.
Because I don't snore anymore. Never mind. I would have ended up what you were just talking about, right?
Same, though. That's where I started with the snoring. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yes. So many additional benefits. This conversation could go on for hours, right? But hopefully that's a good kind of 30,000 foot view perspective. I know we got a little nitty gritty there in the details, but so many additional benefits of fasting. Tommy and I's lives are changed. So many listeners' lives are changed. So many coaching clients' lives are changed. So many challengers' lives are changed. My dad's life was changed. No longer a diabetic after 30 years off 15 medications, down 70 pounds. The testimonials and the proof is in the pudding. So thank you, Ivan, so much for the question. And this should be inspiring, right? We ain't got it figured out, but we're not going to stop trying because we know it works, right? So if you're looking for support, head to the show notes, click the link, join a challenge, grab the blueprint, stay consistent, set that fasting timer. But really, just know that fasting is an absolutely powerful tool. We believe it can help anyone and everyone. And Tommy, I appreciate the conversation as always, man. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.